Hey, how you doing? It's your friend, it's your pal, it's your buddy, Mike Squires with the Couchers Podcast, episode number 210. This episode, my guest is my pal Phil Hurley, who I've been knowing for at least 25 years. 25 years, maybe 26 years. I don't even know. Long ass time. I know I say this pretty regularly, but man, Phil is one of the most talented guys I've ever known. He's a guy who is um, he is the kind of player who is just intimately in touch with his instrument, can do just about anything, and usually, every time I see him, I'm reminded and I'm astounded by his musicianship. Just pretty incredible. He's played with a number of bands. He joined Gigolo Ants with a bunch of fellas that were much older than he was when he was 16. Toured around, did all the stuff. Later played with Tracy Bonham and did the first Lilith Fair. He's done runs with a bunch of other folks, played in some Seattle bands that I saw a lot back in the day. He played bass in Shuggy. Oh God, diggity. What was the band? Oh, forgive me, Phil. The Hula Bees. He played guitar in the Hula Bees. That was a cool ass band. And he's moved about. He was down in LA, was in Nashville for a hot second, and he's been in Austin for 13 years. He's had a couple bands down there, and at last, Phil is fronting his own band, Phil Hurley Band. And you should expect a record from the Phil Hurley Band this year. That's knock on wood. I can't wait to hear it. I can't. Every opportunity I have to see Phil play, I go and check him out. So please do follow Phil. Keep an eye out for his music, and enjoy this conversation. We had a good time. He's one of the few people that I know that got into Black Sabbath, in his 50s. What a cuckoo bear. But he's a convert. He's been converted. Enjoy this conversation. I really loved catching up with Phil. If you're enjoying the Couchriffs podcast, please do sponsor us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Couchriffs. That's what makes this happen. It's what makes the cover songs possible. And I really, really appreciate it. This year has not been as productive as last year so far because I have got like 12 episodes that are just one performance away. So they're coming, and I just started 3 more. So actually, there are a lot. There's also a big benefit video with 18 people in it that is done and finished, and we're just we're working with the publicist and trying to make sure we can maximize everything we can for roadie relief. It's a benefit video for roadie relief. So more details on that later. But thank you for supporting us on Patreon. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing, liking, subscribing, all the bull crap that everyone asks you to do. I appreciate it when you do that for Couchriffs also. So thanks. Also, I would like to thank Variety Coffee Roasters, varietycoffeeroasters.com, and at Variety Coffee on the social media. Go check out their subscription service. You wake up in the morning sometimes and you go down to the kitchen, you're out of coffee. That's bullshit. Well, what do? You go over there to varietycoffeeroasters.com. Click a couple buttons. They ask you some real simple questions. Punch in your address, give them your credit card, and it's like subscribing to a magazine or any other subscription service. I used to have a Razor subscription, but as you can see, I canceled. So you can select every week, every 2 weeks, every month. It's great. It's just that easy. And I drink Variety Coffee Roasters coffee every single morning. That is science fact. And I wouldn't steer you wrong. I just wouldn't. I mean, unless there was a lot in it for me. If there was a lot, I'd ask you to drink some of that mushroom coffee or whatever. But no thanks. Thank you, Variety Coffee Roaster. You guys are rad. Now, we're gonna get into the conversation. Don't forget the golden rule. You know the golden rule. You've been hearing the golden rule your whole life, right? Just treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't be a fucking asshole. I love watching the countdown. It's like mesmerizing. We're both dead silent and just like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah. On my side, your video has been disabled due to internet quality issues. The video is still recording, it says. So I won't be able to see your beautiful face.
Well, do you want me to describe my appearance to you?
Yes, yes, please.
I'm 27, really beautiful, suntanned.
Like to take long walks on the beach.
I get a lot of sun.
Yes.
Really, I'm very fit and well groomed.
Perfect.
Am I painting a good picture for you?
You are. Do you like pina coladas?
I love getting stuck in the rain.
Yes.
The truth is, I look more like I belong in the town where I actually live.
Oh, yeah. You're blending in with the locals. That's a beautiful thing.
Let's start. Well, you know what? Welcome to Couchris, Phil.
Thank you very much, Mike. I've been looking forward to having a chance to be part of this for quite a while.
I want to say I've known you for a long time, and it occurred to me as I was connecting now to talk to you. Today is National Guitar Day, right?
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Huh? Which I think is fucking reductive to guitars because everyone knows that the known universe revolves around guitars. And so
of course,
to reduce it to a national thing is ridiculous as far as I'm concerned.
Indeed.
But I've known you for a long time, and one of the coolest things that has ever happened for me is that after all of my guitars were stolen in a single swipe, and they were missing for a couple weeks is all. I was at work and you called me.
I remember that day vividly.
And you were working at Emerald City Guitars, and you were like, "Hey, there's a guy here, and he's got your guitars."
It was all thanks to your like incredibly ugly pink fuzzy strap on your SG. If it hadn't had that strap, it would have just been another SG. And I was like, no one else would wear this strap but Mike Squires.
Well, you called me and you're like, he's down here and he's got pretty much almost all of them. The ones that he doesn't have are at the pawn shop.
Exactly. And that's the only time I ever saw or heard your military training come through, because you were ready to rip that guy's throat out.
I came down with a thirst for blood. I was ready to drag him outside. And I've cooled off a lot over the years, but I definitely was ready to do harm. And I got there and you not only did you cool me off, because because you're cool like that. You were like, listen, if you kill this guy, you're not going to get the other guitars.
Yeah, the other ones are still in pawn. Yeah, so
he's got the pawn tickets. You're not going to get them.
Yeah.
And you're like, also, he's got a story, and I believe it.
Yeah, he might have been pulling my leg, but we did get him back. And the part that, though, and I don't know if this is the happy ending to me of that whole story, because not only do we get all your guitars back, somehow I had the money to pay him to get him out of pawn, which, I mean, I have no idea how I had the money.
I did not
But years later, you tracked me down and paid me back. Like, it took a couple of years when you finally found your fortune, and you were like, dude, and you laid it on me.
In 1997, I didn't have. I mean, it was like $400 or something. Like that's how much.
I can't remember, but I can't believe I had.
That was like a whole month of rent.
Yeah,
probably more. Yeah. Like I was probably paying $300 a month in rent. So it was a huge amount of money to come up with it. But you paid to have my guitar. So it's very fitting for me to be able to host you on National Guitar Day, because you are like St. Philip the patron saint of
patron saint of stolen guitars,
of guitar returnage.
It is ridiculous. I mean, still at this day, at whatever age I am now, how many hours a day I still devote to just thinking and talking and looking about guitars. I mean, it's like you'd think I'd get over it at some point, but I'm not. I'm far from over it. I was explaining to somebody your crazy Thunderbird with the P bass neck today. Like, what's that? I was like, well, let me tell you. Just
Did you go into the whole history?
I went a little deeper than they were fading away.
Their eyes glossing over.
I didn't really need the answer.
Right.
Man. Yeah.
They're like, oh man,
yeah.
my phone's ringing.
Guitars and coffee too, though, and I'm still a coffee nut. But I met you and a good posse of friends all around that little coffee cart in Seattle, which I was already a pretty bad coffee junkie, but that living in Seattle didn't help. And now I just got back from doing my honeymoon in Italy, and that almost ruined me. And just every day I was like, that's the best cup of coffee I've ever had, until the next day, and then it was like, wait, this is the best.
You drank a lot of espresso there in Italy, didn't you?
Oh, stunning.
Yeah.
That's my next big purchase. I'm doing all my internet homework right now because I'm going to buy an espresso maker, like a proper one.
Well, don't make a purchase without talking to me. I'm still a coffee professional.
I'm going to call you because I've got ideas. I've been doing my homework, but I won't make a move without your.
I'm glad
blessing.
that you don't want to have like an espresso or whatever in any of this crap.
No. We're doing it the right way, man.
Yeah.
No, and you can be Saint Michael, the patron saint of home espresso makers.
I would love that. Well, you know what? I'll give you.
I don't think that one's claimed
I'll give you a solid piece of advice because I'm a person who is a coffee ritual person. Like. I wake up in the morning, I have a fancy kettle,
me too. Gooseneck.
Yeah. And it takes my coffee, it takes the water to a temperature and holds it there until I'm ready to go do,
nice.
And I make pour over in the morning.
Kalita Wave, maybe a Chemex. I've got an AeroPress.
Chemex is
French press.
Is my.
Dude, Chemex is kind of my daily jam. Yeah.
So the thing, if for people who are listening, and if it's not something that you've invested in, the most important piece of equipment, probably even in a cafe, if you had to qualify most important to least important, probably the most important piece of equipment in your preparation is the grinder.
I just upgraded.
Is that right?
I did. I just been using an old blade that I was good with. I was consistent
like
with.
The Hurley blade. Oh, those fucking
grinder.
things, man! Yeah. They're terrible.
I had at least a consistent thing with it, but I mean, or at least somewhat consistent. But I just upgraded to a good burr grinder, and it's amazing. It is amazing how much of a difference it makes. A bit of a mess.
It's a huge difference. Here's the thing, and for people who are listening, here's why this is a fact. All right, let's say I fucking throw my coffee in a sock and I've got a hammer and I just beat the shit out of it, right? Well, some chunks are bigger than others. Some little chunks get powdered. Some chunks are, like rock salt. So then you dump that into, whatever. That's fine for like a French press, but if you're doing a pour over, not only does that dictate the way that gravity will pull water through the coffee and extract it, it'll create channeling in the coffee, uneven extraction, and you're not getting the best out of your coffee.
Yep. Dude, I've been going way too far down this route and enjoying every minute. And like my gal isn't really a coffee drinker. So like I'll every morning I'm like changing the grind by a slight. I'm like, so how's this? And she's like,
tastes
good.
Like coffee. Yeah. I don't get a chance to talk about this stuff with people very often because usually it's like the Fenderbird thing that you're talking about. They're just like,
oh man, I have fond memories of going to the Stumptown Roaster with you in Portland when you were working there. Vinyl only, and just that overpowering, intoxicating smell of fresh roasted beans. And I definitely, I'm almost as passionate about coffee as I am guitars.
Well, that's because you gig almost every night, and you need something to get you up in the morning, huh?
It does help.
No. When I think about people that I know that are deeply connected to their instrument. You're one of the first people I think about.
Man, I appreciate that.
And every time I see you play, I'm once again reminded of your intimate connection to whatever instrument you're holding, whether it's guitar or bass. I think I've even seen you play keys.
I'm maybe drunk, but yeah, I'm not a particularly gifted piano player.
Did you guys all
play drums.
swap
I'm a pretty
in the
good drummer.
Giraffes? Did you guys all
in the Tycoons?
The Tycoons, sorry.
Yeah, in the Tycoons, we all played every instrument.
Yeah. So I'm not imagining that.
I didn't really play well, but really Chris and Gavin played more keyboards than I did.
Right.
I was probably the best drummer of the three. But yeah, I wish that I need a piano, because I felt like in the last couple of years I've been starting to make some strides with it, but I don't have one. And so, I just got to get one in the house.
I think about that too all the time.
Yeah.
Before I forget, my favorite part about seeing that band play live is that only vocals in the PA.
I didn't realize that. I don't know if that was intentional.
That might have been a Chris request, but that could very well be. It lent to an overall very vintage sounding performance. Like all of the sound was projecting off the stage, and then vocals only in the PA. Yeah. You didn't know that, or maybe you just didn't remember.
If viewers are wondering what the hell we're talking about, I was in a short-lived band right as the presidents of the United States of America were kind of wrapping up. I was doing a fun thing on the side with my friend Gavin Gus, and Chris Ballou from the Presidents used to come see us every week. And he was like, man, I want to be in this band too. And we're like, well, then we were just playing a bunch of covers. So we're like, well, let's do something for real. And so the three of us made this thing called the Tycoons. And it got a little too much attention too quickly, and Chris got really flipped out. Like the moment that broke us up, we were supposed to do. Remember back in the alternative radio days, they would always have their big Christmas show.
Yeah,
and it was the end of the year. And what was the name of the one in Seattle?
Jingle Bell Bash.
Yeah, the Jingle All the Way or whatever. It was at the Key Arena, and we got offered to play between Hole and Soul Coughing.
Wow.
And, I had a chance to play to a lot of people, and Chris had clearly had a chance to play, but Gavin had never had that experience. And the day of the show, Chris was like, I can't do this. I just quit music to be back with my children. And that was the end of the Tycoons. And I will say, again, kind of like, I love him for the end of this story. Years later, I wasn't even living in Seattle anymore, and I went to see the Presidents when I was living in LA. And it was backstage, and Weird Al Yankovic was there, and he kind of pulled me out of the dressing room and said, hey, man, I'm really sorry. I really blew that. And it was like, total water under the bridge.
Right.
He had every right to do whatever he wanted to, but it was really an indicator of how good of a man he is, that he remembered and just, had to set the record straight. And it was very admirable.
He's an artist.
I agree.
Yeah. Some people are musicians.
And a child at the same time, though. It makes sense that he makes children's music because he is a child. I used to see him when I lived in Boston. I moved to Boston right out of high school. I was 17. And I was just like out on my skateboard and ripping around the streets. And he was a street performer in Harvard Square. He had a thing called Egg. And it was a solo show. And I used to have an Egg poster on my wall when I was a little kid. And he was, even then, looking back, like everything he did has always been very childlike. It was very simple. It was very very childlike ideas, and that so it was kind of crazy. And then he did a thing with Mark
Sandman
from Morphine, Mark Sandman. They had a little thing together, and then he moved home and rose to fame.
Wow.
You were there at the same time, but I think I moved out to Seattle in 95, 96, and it was really, as an outsider coming in, it was really tangible, the loss. Everybody I met had lost a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a brother, a sister, or somebody to drugs, and there was a lot of sadness.
It was a really dark
I hadn't experienced
time.
Any of that. It was, yeah. And I felt like the Presidents were such an antidote to that. They were the fun again. and luckily we both knew, those guys, and I was friends with Craig Montgomery, who was their sound guy.
Right.
And so I got to go see a lot of those hometown shows right when they were really rising up. And it was like, it made everyone smile again, and I really give them a lot of credit.
I know that you said it made Seattle fun again, but I don't know if Seattle was fun before that. I think that it was
valid point. Yeah.
I think it was very musical.
There was a darkness to Seattle.
There was a lot going on, but fun.
Maybe that they were arriving just as I arrived. So yeah, I didn't really have the backstory there.
Right.
I did just watch a film this week. It's a new, brand new movie starring that beautiful girl Zoe Kravitz, and it's called Kimmy, and it's all about technology, and it's kind of a murder mystery, and it's all filmed in Seattle, like right now.
Oh, really?
And it blew my mind because there were spots. It's like I knew where they were, but it all looks so different, man. Like my Seattle or our Seattle is kind of gone.
When was the last time you were there? Because it is nuts, man.
No, it was only 3 years ago or so.
A lot has happened.
Yeah. I mean, she goes down and gets on a light rail system. I was like, Seattle doesn't have a light rail system. I looked up and
sure it does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it does. It doesn't go a ton of places, but they're expanding it, working on it all the time. And it also has the tunnel, like a connection to Boston. They use the same, like the Big Dig. Seattle had its own version of the Big Dig. Did you know that? It was just as catastrophic.
That replaced the viaduct?
Like they tore that fucker down.
Oh, really? No, that's gone now, huh? Wow.
Gone.
I used to think, when I first moved there, my favorite, because I lived kind of over near, I lived in the what they called the International District,
right.
kind of like Chinatown. And I worked at Emerald City Guitarist down in Pioneer Square. And I used to go down to the OK Hotel, which I thought was just such a groovy place. And it was a groovy place.
One of the best.
I remember thinking, because it was right there on the waterfront and underneath the viaduct. And I was like, if I was a woman, there's no way I would be parking down here. I mean, it was just set up for rape and mugging.
It was a sketchy spot. And I think it's sketchier than ever now.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Damn.
I mean, it was just like poorly lit. Waterfront, just like so cliche.
Yeah.
Got really stabbed down on the waterfront. Just like, fuck.
Yeah.
I worked in the Pike Place Market, and I would see all of the riffraff, filtering through.
Oh, man. Wow. Yeah. I that was like when I first moved there, I started getting gigs in the front part of the OK doing solo stuff. And Soundgarden had just split up, and Ben Shepherd was at the bar, like kind of drunk all the time. And I mean, to me, it's like, fuck, that's Ben Shepherd, man. Like I love Soundgarden. And I was playing one time, and just being a wise ass, I went, played a little bit of the intro of Fell on Black Days. And he just looked up, and he'd like smoke coming out of his ears. And I was like, uh-oh. And so I was like, quickly switched songs, and I started playing, hey, you've got to hide your love away. I mean, at the end, he was there with like two other guys like crying and like drinking, like, and he like came up and was like, you're okay, man. And like I won over Ben Shepherd. He was nice to me from everything. But I thought he was going to pull my head off.
On many occasions, I was like this close to being throttled by Ben Shepherd.
Dude,
he's a big boy too. Big kid.
Yeah.
Imposing figure.
For sure. Yeah. I remember like he and Lanigan and that bass player dude who was in Dinosaur Jr., Mike
Johnson. Yeah.
Dude, the three of them were like, they're all 6 foot plus and scrappy.
Vicious.
I was like, don't get those guys going, man.
Yeah. Just throw Josh Homme in the mix, and then you're like, look out.
Yeah.
Look out.
Yeah, man.
So, I mean, that was like, in a lot of ways, the OK Hotel, which that you would call that sort of your introduction to the music scene in Seattle?
It was, it was a really tricky thing, like, because I had just come off the road from having the most success I'd ever had. I mean, I'd been in Gigolo Ants for a decade, and we were close. We were on a major label, and we did a lot of touring. We had, we had gone internationally and been on television and stuff like that, but we never had like the big hit. And I walked out of Gigolo Ants just in time to join the train with that Tracy Bonham thing that didn't last very long, but she sold 1 million records. She was selling 25,000 copies a week at one point. She did, yeah.
Wow.
And so we went from playing to like nobody to thousands overnight. And, so I finally got off the road of doing that for, a year and a half or something. And I had money in the bank and I had a bunch of fancy clothing and an attitude. And I landed in Seattle and nobody gave a shit. I mean, like, too many people had moved to Seattle and they was like, whatever, dude, like I would go out to like the Crocodile and I knew who everybody was. Like, those guys are the Posies. That's the Fastbacks. That's like, and I'd try, be like, hey, I play music too. And they'd be like, next.
Sweet.
And it
that's
really
like the
wasn't
Keith Richards thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you play
sure.
guitar? 3 fingers, 2 strings, and 1 asshole. Or two fingers, 3 strings, 2 fingers, 1 asshole.
I like it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I met Gavin Gus, who he was a Tacoma boy, and he just was such a friend that he introduced me to everybody, and he and I we would run around, and I wasn't my mid to late 20s there, but we would go out and go to 3 or 4 clubs a night and just see one band at the Sit and Spin, one band at the Crocodile, one band and just like make the scene and just run, and then any party that was going on afterwards, we were out, and he really. Showed me the ropes around town, and he, really, I owe him. Like, once I met him, everybody was like, "Oh, okay, well, come on in." But it took a while.
How did you end up landing in Seattle? Because you were in Boston during the whole Gigolo Ants period, right?
Yeah.
Tracy is from is she
Tracy
from Woodstock?
was Boston too.
Oh, she was.
No, she's from Oregon. She's from Eugene, but she had moved to Boston to go to Berkeley, and got her record deal, and her band was based out of Boston. So I had known her. She was opening shows for Gigolo Ants before I left Gigolo Ants, and so we were friends in that. And so I was the one guy living on the West Coast, traveling back to where the rest of the band still lived in Boston when I was doing that. But I fell in love with Seattle on tour with Gigolo Ants. Coming through in 93 and 94, we played Rock Candy and we played Mo and we played a couple other venues. I can't remember where we played, but we knew the Posies, especially Mike Musburger, their drummer. And I remember him just showing me around, and I was like, I've always had this kind of Rolodex in my head of, could I live here? And I remember thinking, wow, man, I could really do this. It just really lit a fire under my ass. And I thought, because Gigolo Ants had been on the road supporting our first major label record. We toured for 15 straight months, and we just, so it didn't really matter. We didn't have a home anymore. And I thought, well, I can live in Seattle and the rest of the guys can live in Boston, and we'll just make records and tour. Like, who cares where we live anymore, And so I moved in 95 to Seattle and found a place in Wallingford. And I thought, like, oh, this is going to be great. And the guys from Gigolo Ants were just like, not having it. They said, they gave me the ultimatum, like, come back right now or you're done. And so even though I had just put first and last on a house and all this kind of stuff and was in a relationship, I left the girl and moved back. And I made another record with Gigolo Ants, and we made our second album for RCA that never ended up seeing the light of day. And things were starting to fray. Like, the communications were not good amongst us in the band. And I kind of started to realize, you know what? It's time. It was kind of I had grown up in that band. I'd been in it since I was in high school, and it was like
you were 15 when you started playing in that band, right?
Yeah, 16. But those guys were all 5 years older than me, and I was never going to catch up. I was always going to be the little kid in the band, and as much as I love them and I'm appreciative, especially in retrospect of what we accomplished, I needed to kind of forge my own way. And so I packed up all my stuff, and that was one of the bravest and toughest moves I've ever done, because especially going back, I was completely on my own. I didn't really know anybody, and it was just like blind faith that I could make it work. And I landed, you'll appreciate this, because it was the end of January in 96. And I had landed, and a winter storm had just hit Seattle, and there was I had never heard the term black ice. But so I got into SeaTac, and the person I could stay with lived on the top of Queen Anne Hill, which is obviously a big tall hill. And I had all my luggage and all these bags, and the cab driver took me to the bottom of Queen Anne. He was like, I won't go up there. I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, black ice. So I had to walk with all my suitcases and stuff up to the top of Queen Anne. But I'll never forget, because that next morning I woke up, and the house was a beautiful house on the west side of Queen Anne facing the Olympics. The Olympics had just gotten a whole fresh dump of snow, and just the sun on the Olympics. I was like, okay, like welcome. That was my welcome to Seattle.
Pretty
I
majestic.
knew that I was in a good place. It was, yeah. I mean, I missed that. There was something about being surrounded by those mountains, even though you can go for a good stretch without seeing them. It kept you humble. It was like, wow, there's something bigger than me around here.
For anyone that's wondering why you might go for a stretch without being able to see the mountains from a high spot in Seattle, like Queen Anne Hill, which is a very, I think Queen Anne is the highest peak
I think so, yeah.
Although I don't know if that's correct. I think there's a higher spot, and I'll think of it. It's a place that you wouldn't think. It's like one of these weird trivia things. But it's because it's always so overcast and foggy and cloudy that you cannot sometimes see.
I took my now wife up there for a few different visits, and I kept telling her, like, so over there, that's where the Cascade Mountains are. And down here, that's where Mount Rainier is. And finally she was like, right, yeah, sure, dude, whatever. Because we went there like 2 or 3 visits and never saw any mountains at all.
Oh, that's amazing. On a clear day, when the weather is right, there's not a more beautiful place I've ever been.
Dude, I know, because I remember hanging out with you there. Like that, there's a grass beach in Madison Park right on Lake Washington, and and first of all, just lying in the grass and then jumping in that beautiful water, and if you swam out a little way, you were looking right down the lake at Mount Rainier. I mean, that was epic. Some of the best summers of my life.
Really, really incredible. Really incredible. So when you did quite a bit of touring with Tracy also.
I did.
That was after you moved to Seattle the second time, though.
Yeah. Actually, here's a trivia bit for you. I'd gotten the call because she hadn't done any touring yet, but she had a record deal. She got signed to Island, and her band were kids. Her drummer and bass player were 20-year-old kids who had never been on the road. So I was kind of the ringer, and I had just agreed to go out with her, and the phone rang, and it was Paul Westerberg's people asking me to go out and play guitar for Paul Westerberg. And I was like, I just committed to this other gig.
Oh, wow.
Which, I mean, who knows? It might, who knows what would have happened there, but it was a fun ride. The Tracy Bonham thing was a great experience.
Are you a Replacements fan?
Yes, of course. But I've had this conversation. Like I feel like of our generation, REM and the Replacements were kind of like our Beatles and Stones.
Right.
And I was such an REM guy when I was little. I met him when I was 15, and I learned how to play guitar by learning those songs. I wish I had seen the Replacements because I never got to see them live. I think in the same way, if you had only ever gone down the Beatles path, you need a little Stones in there. And I think as a younger kid, I needed a little bit more Replacements. I think I needed a little of their irreverence. I think Gigolo Ants as a band, I think we would have been a little tougher and a little snarkier. We were so nice.
Because you're a Beatles guy, not a Stones guy. If you had to pick one, right?
I love them both. I love them both.
Yeah, of course.
And
Me too.
And I'll put
That's
the
not
Birds
the
right
question,
there with them.
though.
I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
Right. God, I wonder what my life would be like if I wasn't into Ozzy and Motley Crue, and I was into REM and the Birds when I was 15. I probably would have bought a 12 string and never would have had a Floyd Rose.
I had one. Yeah. Well, to me, REM were the antidote. Because I got a guitar when I was 13 and MTV was on and I was seeing all this. It was, a lot of metal. And I knew that wasn't me. I knew that I didn't want to, somebody else could already do that. I didn't. So the guitar players I heard that turned me on were like The Edge from U2 and Brian Setzer and hearing Stevie Ray Vaughan on Let's Dance, stuff like that. I was trying to find something different. And I definitely was not a metal guy. And REM were and I'm not the only person who will say this. I've met people from all around the country who REM were just 4 normal looking dudes from a college town. They weren't from LA. They weren't from Nashville. They weren't from New York. They were just from a small college town like I was, and they made it work. And so they didn't have makeup and long hair and tattoos. And it was like, they were like the everyman's band. And so if they could do it, we could do it. And I know that Matthew Sweet felt the same way, and Velvet Crush in Illinois, and bands all around the country all said, oh, okay, I don't have to be like I'm trying to be from the Sunset Strip, because I'm not from the Sunset Strip.
Right.
I'll just be like, I'm from Potsdam, New York. And so I think they were a blueprint of a different way of doing it for a whole nother generation of bands. And I think I'm always grateful for them for that.
That's interesting. I had a conversation recently, and we were talking about how Nirvana sort of launched a million bands, right? Because they sort of showed a path. Like, hey, look, you don't have to be a virtuoso shredder. Yeah. You don't have to have pro hair and pro gear or whatever. You can learn 3 or 4 chords and write great songs, and there you go. And the Beatles were that band to, the first wave of like more popular pop rock, right?
Yeah.
And arguably the Ventures too.
Oh God, yeah.
You remember, like
they were all
in the '60s. There were surf bands in fucking Oklahoma.
Yeah, those guys are from what, like Tacoma?
Yeah,
not a lot of great surf in Tacoma.
But it's funny. I had a recent conversation. Like, who was the band in the '80s that launched, that was that inspirational band? And I guess in some ways it probably was REM, right?
I think it was, because they were on they weren't on a major label to begin with, and they weren't from a town that people talked about at all. It became a town that people talked about, but they were under the radar until suddenly they were selling millions of records.
You and I had a conversation. It's probably been 2 years. It might have. I don't know. Time's not real. Time is a human construct. But this blew my mind, and this supports everything that we've been talking about for the last 10 or 15 minutes. And that is that you blew my mind one day and you said, I just started listening to Black Sabbath and it's pretty good.
Dude, it's beyond good. I love it. I just didn't have those records. I inherited, I was the youngest of 5, and and all my brothers and sisters' records were there. And there was Zeppelin, and there was the Byrds and the Beatles and the Stones and Stevie Wonder and the Animals and good stuff. I just didn't have any of those records. Like I didn't. And I think also, I was very, as I mentioned, I was younger than the guys in Gigolo Ants, and they were very opinionated about what good music was and what bad music was. And I remember I got in a bunch of trouble in Gigolo Ants days because I found Soundgarden. I was like, I think I like this band Soundgarden. They're like, we don't like Soundgarden. And I was like, maybe you don't like Soundgarden.
Did they ever listen to their melodies, especially on
they just weren't having it, And so, wow. I don't think I ever, I knew a couple of Ozzy Osbourne songs, but I'd never really dug back in. And I knew Iron Man and I knew Paranoid, but good Lord. 2 Good Cups of Coffee and Master of Reality. That's just Into the Void, man. Dude. That's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Right.
I so good. I love Volume 4. I love those records. God,
I'm really happy that you found your way to Black Sabbath. Have you gotten into their self-titled debut?
I have heard it, but I don't own it. I got to buy to complete the initial phase. I need the first one, and I don't have Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath.
Well, you have Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die. You have those, but you
no.
You just have like the
those are Ozzy though, are they?
Yeah, they are. Those are
Ozzy
I
records.
think Never Say Die is the last Ozzy record.
Wow,
they get more into like some like cocaine fuel, like it's almost like some Pat Travers boogie rock.
Wow,
it's pretty nuts. There's like some Queen like Brian May like guitar tones. Okay. Some boogie rock. It's fucking still really good. It's not the same sludgy. It's not the stuff that people really put on a pedestal. But if it was the only thing that Sabbath ever did,
Yeah.
People would be stoked about it. Are you kidding me? Fuck.
Wow. I didn't realize they had so much variety in their records. I mean, I like, there's really cool. I like their mellow jams. I like
psychedelic
Tony's
stuff.
like acoustic things. Like, those are great. I mean, there's a lot more like as whole records. They're really cool records. I had only heard songs here and there. And now I just put them on and just flip the record and then flip the record and then flip the record and just keep them spinning all day.
I think that their first record would have been a great, because I know you're a Cream fan. I know you're a Peter Green fan. You introduced me to Peter Green, in fact. I mean, not personally, not like, hey, Mike, meet Peter. This is PG. PG, this is Squires.
He's my man.
But I think you turned me on to the Boston Tea Party discs.
Oh yeah, I didn't know about Peter Green until I moved to Seattle. I was working at Emerald City Guitars, and it was a blues player, a local blues player named Henry Cooper, and he started feeding me like bad, like sketchy cassette bootlegs and stuff like that. But I was like, whoa, how did I? And then they used to listen to a CD at the store that's called Shrine 69, and it was. In 1969, they opened for the Mothers of Invention at the Shrine Auditorium in LA.
Oh, wow.
And the recording is amazing. And actually, I closed my set with my new band. There's a song called Rolling Man. It's a direct lift from a B.B. King song. But I've stolen it and kind of made it my own. And man, his tone, good God. Though one of the things I learned, as we dig our archaeological digs into music is that a lot of the stuff when I was listening to that early Fleetwood Mac that I thought was Peter Green is really Danny Kerwin,
right?
His little yellow project, and that guy's a wonderful player. I'm really really
is
special.
Bare Trees
Every bit as good as Peter Green.
All Danny. Bare Trees, that album. Bare Trees.
Yes. Oh, that's a good record. Yeah.
I think Then Play On is one of my very favorite records of all time, and it's just
so weird. It's great. Yeah.
It's a really weird record, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
When you listen to that record, what is the overwhelming feeling that you get when you listen to it?
I mean, it feels like somebody cracking up a little bit to me. I mean, not
it
has
laughing,
a little bit
like falling apart.
Yeah, falling apart. Yeah, it feels like there's cracks in reality, that are starting.
Some Sid
to show.
Barrett type shit. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could make a comparison with Sid Barrett or Brian Wilson or something like that, where they were the genius of the band, but then things went really wrong.
It's an incredibly sad record.
I agree.
When I listen to it, it doesn't make me sad because that album, just musically brings me a lot of joy to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
But it is one of the saddest sounding records. It has just the right amount of room reverb. And then just like the lyrics, like there's not a lot of joy in the lyrics.
No, it's true. A lot of minor key, a man of the world and stuff like that. That's definitely like, there's a lot of melancholy for sure.
It is, I don't know, but perhaps I prefer it over even Pink Floyd for psychedelic blues.
Oh, I think he was. I've heard other people. I've even heard Jimmy Page say this. I think he was the preeminent British blues player. I love Jeff Beck. I love Jimmy Page. Clapton has his moments, but I think that Peter Green was speaking I don't understand how he understood how to speak so truthfully. It's kind of like, Duane Allman, where they're kids. Right. They're 22-year-old kids. And they're playing with the soul of like a 72-year-old black man. It's like, how did they understand it that fundamentally? The space they leave, the phrasing.
Someone that had lived that music and right.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And his tone. That's an inspirationally spectacular tone.
I'll probably mess this up, but was it not B.B. King that said that Peter Green was the only white boy that ever made him sweat?
Yeah. I love that quote.
God, no one will ever say anything like that about me. Unless it's like, I got to get the fuck out of this room. Squires is the only fucking person that can clear a room. Get me out of the van.
I had I dated the really wrong girl about a decade ago, and all my friends knew it and didn't tell me. But the one good thing this girl did is she got me front row tickets at a beautiful theater down in San Antonio. Front row tickets for BB King. I sat right in front of him. I could see the knobs on his amp, and
Wow.
he was 83, 84, and did a lot more talking than playing. But when he did play, it was like, there it is. It's like the clouds part and like this fucking ray beam of truth comes down. It was like, God, BB King. You know?
It just, it's like a laser beam.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Special.
So let's see. We took a big sidebar there. How long were you out with Tracy before you
it didn't last that long.
Yeah,
it didn't last that long. That what a weird, to have really lived the anatomy of a one-hit wonder, because she had this huge bidding war and ended up signing a big deal to Island Records, and she was their big priority for the year. And like I said, she sold like 1 million records, but they wouldn't even put her next record out. So I think all told, we were out for about 10 months.
Wow.
And went all around the world, and then the last thing we did together was the very first Lilith Fair festival.
Oh.
And I saw the writing on the wall. I was like, you know what, this isn't going to happen. Like, she's not going to let us play on the next record. And so I was like, thank you. I'm moving back to Seattle. And Sure enough, after I quit, she fired the rest of the band and never really had a moment again, which was really odd for somebody, who had that kind of success. But, she still makes music, but I don't know that the label ever gave her a genuine chance again.
When you were out on Lilith Fair, did you meet Luke on that tour?
Luke Doucette?
Luke Doucette?
No, I didn't.
Because you guys know each other, right?
I do. I met him. Actually, man, we met on stage in Memphis, Tennessee, a few years back. And they were like, hey, we're going to do this panel on electric guitars. I thought we were talking about guitars. And I showed up, and it was Luke and me, a guy named Colin Linden from Canada, Albert Lee, and James Burton. Fucking James Burton. Like, no pressure.
Fucking Burton.
Dude, there's video of it too. And Luke and I were definitely the two kind of unknowns, and we kind of bonded over the fact that we both we got our licks in. It was really special. No, the guys on that tour, on the Lilith Fair, it was Paula Cole, and so she had Jay Bellerose playing drums, who was really memorable, Fiona Apple was on it, and she had that guitar player named Lucky, who ended up marrying Elvis's daughter. And then Mary Chapin Carpenter had Mary Chapin Carpenter had Duke Levine playing guitar for her, who was just spectacular. Though this was one of my favorite stories about that whole tour, because we scared people. We showed up and we were listening to Black Sabbath, and I had a Marshall, and we were like drinking Jack Daniels and stuff, and we scared the shit out of the rest of the Lilith Fair people, because they were all like polite.
Tracy's single is a rock song.
Oh, we were a rock band. I mean, I played 2 Marshalls on 7. I mean, I played loud. We were a loud rock band. Yeah. And the rest of the show was not a rock concert, So, but I really liked Mary Chapin Carpenter's band. They were just such professionals, and they would do this thing before they went on stage in their dressing room, where their keyboard player would have an accordion and he would do a vocal warm up, and they'd all sing together. And I was so smitten with them that I would go in and just sing with them. And the keyboard player was just, he knew every song in every key ever written. Finally, I was like, dude, who are you? I'm like, what's your story? And he's like, well, I'm from Western Massachusetts originally, and my wife and I had a band back in the 70s called the Starland Vocal Band.
I don't know who that is, but
I was like, wait a minute. Did you write Afternoon Delight? And that's the dude.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, dude, you're my hero. And he's the Afternoon Delight guy. The Starland Vocal Band.
I bet he got a good payday when they used that one in the
Anchorman.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. That movie's worth watching just for that scene. It's so funny.
Oh yeah. Well, that song is incredible. Also, just the subject matter is,
I know, it's brilliant.
That's a wonderful thing about popular music of the 20th, late 20th centuries. All of the great songs are about sex or not having sex because you had a breakup.
Yep. Yeah, I heard the one the other day that like it's just one of those sentiments that doesn't fly at all anymore. I love that. If you can't be with the one you love, honey, love the one you're with. Like really, dude, that's not going to work.
That's not living my best life.
I mean, it might have worked for Stephen Stills in 1970, but that's not flying anymore.
Yeah, not so much. So, okay, that gig, I have to imagine that doing Lilith Fair was pretty incredible. Those were really big crowds. What do you guys play, the Gorge?
We didn't do the Gorge, but we did the comparables. You know, they're all sheds.
Right.
They were 15 to 25,000 seaters. You know,
not bad, kid.
No, it was fun. That was really fun. And then, yeah, I mean, I walked away from all that because I had been out on the road. You know, at that point, I was 26 or something like that, and I had been on the road hard for 5 years in a row. And I moved to Seattle, and I wanted to be in Seattle, so I really stepped away from touring for a little while. I got offered the Paula Cole gig, and I was like, I don't think so. So I really wanted to just be in Seattle, and I thought mistakenly, I thought, well, I can get back on the ride anytime I want. And I did do some touring with Fountains of Wayne in 99. And I did some with a friend of mine, an English artist named Miles Hunt from the Wonder Stuff. But you've done this too. When you're like the hired guy or you're trying to jump from gig to gig, you got to stay on the ride or people forget about you quick, and so I definitely, I learned
the original attention span thing. Yeah.
Yep. And so I definitely, I needed to step off for a little while for quality of life and sanity and not sobriety, but just a break from the level of insanity. But I don't know that I ever was able to jump back on. And, I ended up because, it's one thing to be the side guy and like keep getting hired by people. But I suddenly had, later on, I had aspirations of being a writer. So I kept joining these bands and trying to grow a band from the bottom, whether it was Stone Honey, which I gave a decade to. And then I gave a decade to the South Austin Moonlighters so that I could sing my songs. And then the problem is, if it doesn't fly and it ends because you're playing under a band name, nobody knows me. I was, they know the name of the band, but nobody knows that I wrote that song and I sang that song. So that's why now I'm trying to build my own thing under the Phil Hurley name.
Right. I think probably, it's probably easy to say that's what you should have done, but
yeah.
Those were good bands.
You made a lot of great music.
Yeah, sure. I really believed in them, and I thought, this is if I'll have a better shot if I'm with a bunch of really hot cats like this, and we, both those bands had their swings. It just didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't connect, and we didn't. Biggest thing was it's harder and harder. Like I talked with some of my friends in our generation, like where would you go if you're a younger aspiring musician, or how do you get your break now? It's so hard to find people who will help. In those bands, we never found the right booking agent. We never found the right manager. We were going to work as hard as we were being asked to, but we could never find folks who would work that hard for us. And It seems like now everything's on the artist, there's no help. It's like, you have to be your own manager, your own booking agent, your own PR. It's, and then even if you do sign to a label, they're just going to take the money, but they're not going to do any of that work for you. I feel like I was in that last generation where, like Gigolo, we were with Gold Mountain Management, and those guys were great. They were professionals. They answered the phone, and when they called, people answered because they had a reputation, and they really got things done. And I don't really know where that is anymore.
When you left Seattle, you went to L.A.
Actually, I went to Amsterdam.
Oh, that's right.
I did. Yeah. Yeah, and I did. I gotten married to a Dutch girl, and I ended up. I got married in Seattle, and then we had an opportunity to move to Amsterdam. So, I was stoked about it. Though it was such the wrong place at the wrong time, because especially this was early 2000s, and everything there was DJ music, and people said so what do you do? And I was like, I play guitar, and they'd be like, why? I'd play out on the streets and people would cross the street to get away from me. So that was the wrong place to be a musician of my ilk. So I did end up moving to from there to Los Angeles. And my first gig when I got back to LA was playing with my friends Letters to Cleo, opening for Cheap Trick. And I was like,
okay, back, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So, and even though I didn't love living in LA because it was just a hard life, I did a lot of really great work there. I mean, I'm really proud of the stuff that I did there. And there was just so many opportunities, that's like, whether you like that town or not, it's where there's shit going on. If you want to be in a commercial, or if you want to do something for a television show, or if you want to do something like I was in the original cast of Rock of Ages, like that shit just happens there. It's not happening in Austin. I love Austin, but it's not happening here.
Entirely different vibe.
Totally. And people had told me this before I moved to, because I just celebrated my 13th year in Austin, and people had said had described it as the velvet rut, because it's a great place to live, but you kind of get stuck in your Austin thing. And I see it. I mean, I love it. I love it here, but there's no management, there's no booking agents, there's no record labels. And so it's like occasionally a band gets out of Austin. Gary Clark, that was, a decade ago, Black Pumas. But I mean, like in the time that I've been here, like that's kind of it. I mean, Spoon 20 years ago, but it's like once every 10 years a band gets out of Austin. It's really tough. Where like, it seemed like for a while with Seattle, every 10 months, another band was able to get out and get some national recognition, or New York or LA or whatever,
But I'm not imagining this. I don't think. You can be a Texas musician and have a successful career just playing in Texas and maybe in Oklahoma a little bit. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And, there's various stages of that. I mean, I've been here 13 years and I haven't had to have a job. I just play. I play music, and I'm not in the most successful band, but I mean, there are enough gigs that I hustle. I do solo stuff. I do duo stuff with my wife. I do stuff with my rock band, but I can just play. Though there is a real circuit down here. There's this own thing called Texas country, and it's kind of JV Nashville. But I mean, I've got a bunch of friends who are in bands that maybe you would have heard of.
Just kidding, Texas.
No, I mean,
don't mess with Texas, Phil.
But like, they're not getting the national recognition of a Kenny Chesney, but like bands like the Eli Young Band and the Josh Abbott Band and Stoney LaRue and stuff like that. I have friends who are in those bands, and those guys are all on tour buses. They're playing to thousands of people a night, and they're living a good life.
Just in Texas.
Yeah. I mean, they don't even play in Austin. Like those bands, all those big Texas country bands, they all live here and they don't play here. They play in the other towns.
They're playing in San Antonio,
Wichita,
Corpus
Falls,
Christi.
and shit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a very protected little fraternity too. There's been like the same kind of group of bands that have been in it since I moved here, and they'll only, again, maybe every couple of years they'll allow one younger band to kind of like join the ranks. But it's we really had aspirations with Stone Honey of kind of being part of that, and it was definitely like, you're not from Texas, you're not invited kind of thing. So I was like, okay.
Who is the godfather of that scene?
Pat Green, I would say, is one of the biggest names. I mean, Joe Ely generationally before that, but Joe Ely's bigger and better than Texas country. I mean, but the Texas country thing, it's tied in with what they call red dirt. I mean, I guess you could really, he's overlooked a gentleman that I played with who's a brilliant singer-songwriter, a guy named Jimmy LaFave. Jimmy was kind of the conduit that he is a Texan, but he went to school in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and he was there when a young Garth Brooks was coming up. And Jimmy was one of the few guys who could cross that divide between Oklahoma and Texas. He was a brilliant troubadour and a really lovely singer. So I would give Jimmy credit for that. But yeah, I mean, the biggest.
So you mean to tell me there's a divide between Oklahoma and Texas for music?
And it's all over fucking college football.
Like
not there's
really.
I'm not kidding you. There's like open animosity between those two states. And to me, it's like, they kind of look exactly alike, but like there's this crazy competition between those two states. And I swear it all comes down to college football. But yeah, it's still kind of like fighting words, like there's definitely, animosity between Oklahoma and Texas, which you wouldn't think, but there is.
Tell me, I mean, when you showed up in Austin, did you not have a short stint in Nashville also?
We did. Yeah. What happened is when Stonehoney had signed a big deal with a big name producer guy, and he was going to pay for us to move to Nashville. And so we packed up everything we owned, and we played one show on our way to Nashville in Austin. And the show was nothing special, but friends had a house party for us the next night where we played, and we met Polly Parsons, who was Graham Parsons' only child. And
I know Polly.
I love Polly. I mean,
she's great.
Deep in my heart.
Yeah.
And so she fell in love with Stonehoney, and we were supposed to be in Fort Worth, I think, the next day. She said, "No, you're not going anywhere. You're coming to this party with me." And she took us to this party in North Austin that was like the best party you've ever been to. And we were at the house of a guy named Eddie Wilson. And Eddie Wilson had owned in the 70s the most famous music venue in Austin called the Armadillo World Headquarters. And then he, in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, he owned 2 restaurants called Threadgills. And so he was really an architect of the Austin music community, and he just took us in with open arms. And so like we were at his house and we played, and then coincidentally on our way to Nashville, we were going to play this thing called Folk Alliance International in Memphis. He came up with a whole posse of Austin people, and we just had a blast for a week in Memphis together. So we did go to Nashville, and we really tried. Like we lived, it was like a bad reality show. It was 5 adult men with 1 vehicle in a 4-bedroom condo. And we would go out every night, and we had a residency on Broadway, and we met a lot of good people. But the industry at that point in Nashville was really run by Big and Rich. John Rich was the big name, and all they wanted was like a 19-year-old girl who didn't write her own songs. And so we were the antithesis of what they wanted. They liked us. Like guys from the labels would have us sneak up the back stairs so no one could see, and we'd play them our songs, and they were like, God damn. I mean, we had a guy say like, "Man, you're the best band I've heard in 10 years. If I sign you, I'll get fired." So we saw quickly that like as much as we wanted to be in Nashville and tried to be in Nashville, it was just the wrong place. Like we were never going to get any attention there.
There was not opportunity.
Yeah. So we ended up going back briefly to LA, but then making the move, like I said, 13 years ago, 2009, we moved to Austin. And right when we arrived, we had a residency at Threadgills, and we had a community of friends, who were there to support us and help us. So it was and we had a record deal because we got out of the deal with that big name producer guy. And the gentleman I mentioned, Jimmy LaFave, had just started a label. So he signed us up, and we made our first record, and it was kind of off and running.
Let me ask you this quick sidebar question. You said that you guys had a residency on Broadway, and I am fucking fascinated by that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was different then because now it's very Vegas-like.
Yeah.
I was just there in last September, and it was just like, what? They're playing Metallica songs on Broadway. In some of the places. Yep. Of course, there's a Kid Rock bar that's like 5 stories tall, and
the best.
It's all very strange.
Broadway, the best bar from back in the day until today is Robert's Western Wear. That's the one.
Yeah,
that's where you're going to hear really good music. And I had a really dear friend in LA, a girl named Sarah Gail Meach, and I played country with her in LA, and she was really good. And when we were all, there was this mass exodus of LA country bands to Austin, and we were like, "Come on, like come with us." And she was like, "Nope, I'm moving to Nashville." And I was like, "You're crazy. Why? Like you don't look the part." She looks like a villainess from a Marvel comic book or something. She's all tatted up and just a rocker, She's the queen of the scene, man. She headlines Friday nights down there with the best band, and she makes a ton of money. But you got to work. And I mean, there, she's out in between every song, hustling tips, and there's a living to be made there. But man, you work, and those guys are. I knew guitar players who were doing back-to-back shifts, playing 8-9 hours a day, and
that's a lot of playing, a lot of songs.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How does your brain just have that in there?
Yeah, I know. How do
you remember that many bridges?
I know. That's it. That's the scary part too, man. Like if you think you're a good guitar player, go watch that broke ass kid who's only making $25 tonight at that corner bar next to Kid Rock's, and he'll smoke you. There's so many good players in that town, and they're all playing borrowed Brent Mason licks and stuff, but they're fucking good at it. I mean, that's especially in the last 5 years. I mean, every good young player in the nation has moved to Nashville, and I mean, I think that it's up the ante of the town, but God, it must be so competitive. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, when we were there, we played the cheesiest joint on the Strip. It was called like the Cadillac Ranch, and I think it became the NASCAR bar after we were done. Like, that's pretty low. But, we were just we knew that it wasn't a great fit, but we were just kind of doing anything we could while we were there to try,
Sure. Yeah, of course. So when you guys got to Austin and landed there, how steep of a learning, because there's a lot to Texas. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, there are a million punchlines and a million jokes about how Texas is there's America and then there's Texas.
Yeah.
Don't mess with Texas, all of it. But really musically it operates as a sovereign nation, right? So what was the learning curve like?
Well, I felt like we really skipped steps because we met folks like Eddie Wilson and Jimmy LaFave. And then also there was a third name that I got to throw in there because he was a dear friend who's passed away. But we met a guy named Louis Myers. And Louis was one of the 3 guys who created South by Southwest. And he had a legendary club called the Liberty Lunch. So knowing those guys as our first friends and forays into the scene, they introduced us to everyone. They steered us in the right path. And so, I mean, I feel like we got to avoid some of the pratfalls of a younger band, and also just had the advantage of having sound advice and good people helping us from the get-go. And it didn't all work out, but I felt like we definitely skipped steps and got to start in a different spot. Like like a lot of there's a spot called 6th Street that once upon a time was really the epicenter of Austin music. It's gone now. It's way grosser than Broadway. But a lot of musicians just to play end up having to play down there. We never had to do that. We were already getting like better real gigs, and so yeah, I feel like we were really fortunate with the folks that we met early on, But yeah, there's a learning curve to Texas. But the other thing that rings in my ears, like when I first was getting ready to move here, people were like, "Oh man, Texas, you're gonna hate it. Like you might like Austin, but the rest of the state sucks." And I haven't really found that to be true. I mean, I've done a lot of traveling over the last 13 years, and Texas is pretty darn cool. I mean, in general, I'm sure that there are some closed-minded, hate-filled, nasty people that you can find somewhere.
You find them everywhere.
But in general, Texans are pretty welcoming and they also, I mean, like it's a big rugged, as I've learned more about the state, like you really had to want to be here. Texas is a tough spot. I mean, every bug and plant and bird is trying to eat you and kill you. So, I mean, and then there were Comanche Indians. So, I mean, you really had to want to be in Texas. So there's a fortitude here in the people, but it's kind of no nonsense. And I like that. It's not like, I loved living in the Pacific Northwest, but it took me forever to gain people's friendships. Like, because people were cordial, but guarded, and like after 3 years, I'd finally be like, are we friends yet? Or Texans will either like, punch you in the face or buy you a beer, but it's it's going to be, or both, but it's going to be a little more, it's pretty honest. I got to turn on the light. It's getting dark in here.
Okay. Yeah, it is dark in there. I was like, oh, wow.
But yeah, so I mean, I've come, I don't claim to be a Texan in any way. I just married a Texan, so I've learned a lot of lessons about it. But I mean, as we were discussing earlier, talk about a city that's changed. I mean, my gal was born here, and Austin was 350,000. It's 2.2 million now. So, I mean, it's really changing and not always for the better, and what happens, as we saw in Seattle and we saw in San Francisco and every other city, the money chases the creativity out. Like when it becomes all just about tech dollars, that doesn't leave a lot of room for songwriters,
Right. There's a weird thing that's also happened, and I've talked about it a lot in various conversations here, is that there used to be these regional scenes, and there was a sound that maybe didn't, not like a set sound, not like there was an SST sound or a sub pop sound, but there was a vibe, right?
I agree.
And those sorts of things don't exist anymore because of that, and also because the internet sort of dilutes the way information is just moved around the world. So
That's very true. I used to use Seattle as like Seattle. I thought was like the perfect little microcosm because you had good bands, good clubs, and good record stores. So the bands could play the local clubs. Local labels would let them make a record, and they'd put out records on local labels in local record stores where local people would go buy records by local bands, and they got played on the local radio station. And it was like, that's how you do it. That's how you build a scene. Support what you have, you know? And I loved that. I mean, it made it so that things could grow
an isolated
really
enough place.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, you remember that. I mean, you could grow like the Western State Hurricanes went from playing 2 gigs to being on the cover of the paper. Like it was like, you know, you could get traction really quickly and people got excited about things because the news traveled fast and it was a little community. And I loved that. That was an exciting time, you know?
Yeah. What has the transition been like for you putting a solo band together after the dissolve of the Moonlighters?
It's been very rewarding is the bottom line. I mean, it's hard. It's definitely because I never had to be the guy steering the ship. I've been in bands my whole life, and I never had to be the guy doing the day-to-day work. I have to book it, I have to promote it, I have to pay my band, and I'm not
make sure everyone can make rehearsals.
Yeah, well, and God, rehearsal. I can't get anybody to fucking rehearse. You know, that's
right.
You know, that's really tough. You know, so yeah, it definitely has its own fair share of difficulties that I didn't expect, but you'd think at my age now, I started being in bands when I was 8. You'd think that like the nervous jitters and that excitement before you go on stage would finally be done. With this band, I'm giddy. Like I had a gig on Wednesday this week and I woke up and I was like, I get to play my guitar tonight. Like I'm excited about it again. Like I'm like, I sit down and work on the set list during the day and like, I care about it. And like I used to care about it. It's really, really fun to like have it be that, because it's all me, you know, it's like, it's my name on the poster. It's mine. I'm writing all the songs. It's like, I get to make all the choices now. And, I don't know that I've ever enjoyed it more. And I know it's good. Like, I don't know if anybody's going to come, but I know it's good. Like I can hear it. It's like, holy shit, this is a good band. And I don't know that I know that my aspirations have changed. I know, you know, I'm 52 years old. I'm not, Rolling Stone magazine is not going to put me on the cover. Like the labels are not looking for me.
You have boyish good looks though.
Well, yeah, that for a little while longer.
Just don't grow a silver beard like this.
But you know,
it's game over.
But nobody's looking. It's like I'm not going to be the next big thing, but that's okay. Like I do it because I love it, and I do it, and and people. I'm delighted that people still see that. Like I had people just this week, like, man, you look like you're having so much fun. It's like I am. You know, like that's the part. It would be great to think that I would have one more chance to have records out and be out on the road and get to do all that stuff again. I don't know that I think that's necessarily in the cards under my name, but that doesn't mean that I won't do it. You know, and if the right thing came along again, I mean, I loved doing that. I loved being the side guy for somebody and being the guitar player for hire as well. And if a chance came along, if the right band came through, if it was, I don't know, when Neil Young finally calls me, I'd go out and do that stuff again. I liked being on the road, and I felt like after a while I learned how to do it without hurting myself.
Did you have a Neil Young cover band?
I did, and we didn't. I really never overdid it, but man, it was good. It was called The Year of the Horse, and there's video out there, and it was actually this was a great. It was a great lesson in the power of social media because there was this dirty club in South Austin called Trophies that's now been fixed up by the Continental Club. It's called Sea Boys. But my friends ran every Wednesday night, and there was no cover charge. They only had beer and water. And if you're in a band playing, they'd give you beer for free, but they charge you for the water. And just the bathrooms that rivaled CVGBs of just true filth, but
Yeah.
it was, you could do whatever you wanted. It was a Wednesday night, and they had the club, and there was, a stage and a PA. So this one Wednesday night, I was like, man, I want to play some Neil Young tonight. So I put something on Facebook saying, anyone want to come play a set of Neil Young with me? And a great guitar player named Andre Moran showed up. Actually, it was 10 years ago yesterday that we did this. And
Really?
A drummer that I know named Vinny showed up, and a bass player named Andy Carroll showed up. And there's video of our very first song. We opened with Like a Hurricane. And it's on YouTube, and it's fucking great.
And wait a minute. So you put the message out there that morning?
That day, and the dude showed up, and we just said, I was like, just follow me. And we crushed. And it was like,
I mean, that probably was
really,
as good
really
as Crazy Horse.
It was really good. And so I fine-tuned it. And actually, there is, if you search, unfortunately, it's kind of an odd, the way like it got labeled on YouTube is in there. If you look under the name Chris Green, because that's the guy that shot it, Chris Green, Year of the Horse. One of the last shows I did, we did a 7-camera shoot at a beautiful theater. And
oh, wow.
I styled it very much after like the live Rust album. So I came out solo acoustic first with a harp and a 12-string, and did like I Am a Child and, Hey, Hey, My, the acoustic version, and some pretty ones. And then a first version, and we like totally outfitted the stage with carpets and groovy rugs and incense and styled it out. And then a first version of the band came out with a steel player, and we did things like Only Love Will Break Your Heart and Harvest Moon and Unknown Legend and like the pretty stuff. And then the steel went away, and we turned up, and it gets, I had massive tweeds and everything, and we like brought the rock, and it was really good. The thing I didn't want to get caught up in was being in a tribute band.
Right.
It was like, am I going to start wearing a wig and a flannel shirt? It's like, I didn't want to go there. Like there are bands, there's like a good Tom Petty one here in town, and the dude works at it looking like Tom Petty, it's like, good for you. But I can't do that. Like I love Neil Young, but I don't want to be Neil Young.
Well, you wouldn't have to do that. I think about it all the time. Like, and actually, Neil Young is one of those ones. Tom Petty is. Unfortunately, there are a good handful of them, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are really good.
But
the
cover
songs
bands
are so fucking good, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was at the same time, around the same time that we did the Neil Young thing with mostly the same players, we did a Beatles thing. And the Beatles thing, we were all such obsessive Beatles fans that like it started giving me anxiety because I had so much to remember. I mean, to do it right, I had to bring 4 or 5 different guitars, and I had to remember.
You were doing the John
bridges
part?
and all that stuff. Well, we didn't really assign specific parts. We just like who's going to cover what, and we were really battling to do them right. It started to really freak me out. Like I started to like not be able to sleep at night because like, we were doing like the full Abbey Road suite and stuff like that. And I had so much information in my brain. I wasn't having fun with it after a while. Like I did a Stones thing with some friends.
Right.
And if a Stones thing is sloppy and loose, it sounds like the Stones. But a Beatles thing,
right.
Everyone knows that music so inside out that it had to be right. And we were so obsessed with it that I got to the point where they would ask me if I would do it again. And I finally said, I can't. It's just like
people our age, it's like you're born, you get a slap on the ass, so you start breathing, and then basically they start playing the Beatles for you, right?
Yeah. That's definitely my very first record, and I've listened to them and loved them my whole life.
Did you watch Get Back? You did, right?
Every second. I devoured every single second of it. Yeah.
Wasn't it incredible how fucking just human they are?
Yeah. God,
on full display.
Totally true. Yeah. And like, just how they could how goofy they were. I mean, just so silly. And though my favorite part, and I think everyone's already commented on this, but like when Billy Preston walks in, everything just gets so much better so quickly. It was like, wow.
What
it was like,
a fucking dude.
That just blew my mind,
What a dude.
Yeah.
You know what? If I was George Harrison, I would have quit too.
Yeah. I mean, he's bringing in All Things Must Pass and I, Me, My, and they're like, no. And it's like, oh, man. I mean, not to in any way try to compare myself to George Harrison, but that was kind of the corner I got painted into with Gigolo Ants because Dave Gibbs and my brother Steve Hurley were the main songwriters in Gigolo Ants, and they were 5 years older than me. And that job was filled. They were good songwriters, and they were competing between the two of them who was going to get cuts. There was certainly no room for this kid 5 years younger to start bringing his songs, And so if I was ever going to have a chance to get a song in, I was going to have to go do something else. And so I can relate. I think every musician saw things in each one of the guys that they're like, ooh, there's a little bit of me in there, that the time you were the control freak, or the times that you were just a petulant bitch, or the times, like we've all, if you've been in a band, that I understand why for other people that wouldn't be interesting at all. But for folks like us who have spent our lives in rehearsals and songwriting sessions, it's so familiar. We've all lived that,
My favorite parts were when they were playing songs and they didn't sound good.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of it where you're like, well, maybe it only doesn't sound good because I know what it's eventually going to sound like, or maybe it just fucking is the sound of four dudes playing parts, but not playing a song.
Yeah. Right.
Together. Yeah. They're just like all four sort of bashing away and trying to figure something out, but it humanized them in a way that nothing has before. And I really appreciated it.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah. And I love too, like that. I saw some people kind of making fun of it. It was like, Yoko breaks up the Beatles by patiently sitting on an amp.
Right.
Like she didn't do anything wrong. It was like so easy to make up those stories of, the wicked Yoko. And it's like, no, she was fine. She didn't do anything.
She just celebrated a birthday last week.
Did she? All right.
90.
Yeah. Wow. 90. Holy cow.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. The other, I think, thing that stuck out to me was when Paul was talking about her being there, and he was just like, I don't care. Why should I care?
Yeah.
You know?
They were accustomed to that,
He was just like, look, if it makes John happy, great.
Yeah. Right.
And those guys didn't hate each other.
No,
they were getting along fine.
Yeah.
There's all those, whatever.
I love too that there's no tuners and no fucking guitar stands. They were just like, whatever, it's like lean it precariously off the edge of a table,
Oh, you see one fall over there at one point too.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a hollow body. I think it was a telly or something.
And I what was that?
I think it was a telly though. So it was like,
oh yeah,
that could fall over. It's sturdy,
Yeah, I've been tempting fate because I've been gigging with a 66 Firebird, and it's like it doesn't feel like if something's going to happen. It's like when's it going to happen? It's going to, and so I'm so fucking careful with it. But it's like it's a Firebird.
It's got that long, narrow neck
and doesn't fit in any stand.
No, you got to get one of these hangy dangly ones.
I do have one of those now,
like that. Yeah, that'll do you right, won't it?
Yeah, it's better.
You know what else I've seen? Well, I guess you're not playing through half stacks anymore. I've seen people take wall hangers and screw them into the side of their amp head.
412, yeah. Oh, into the head.
And then it's sitting on top of a 412, and you can hang your guitar. I was like,
oh, that's a good idea.
Well, that's genius.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Aren't you fucking clever?
Isn't that amazing? I mean, when we all used to play half stacks. I can't remember the last time I saw somebody in a club with a half stack. If I bring a bassman with a 212 cab, the sound men start getting nervous.
Right.
And how bizarre too that a Princeton now costs more than a twin reverb. A lot more. So weird. Everybody wants the little ones. If I had known, I would have bought them all back then.
The problem is that those old 412s that nobody wants are still really expensive. Otherwise, I'd be buying them up.
Are they? Because I see them for $400.
Yeah, but what's in them?
Right. That's true. Yeah. I'm actually I've been doing this crazy thing where this gal her father passed away, who was an Austin musician, and I've been selling all this gear for her. I'm supposed to meet a guy to sell him a twin reverb here soon, so I might have to wrap this up and go sell a guy an amp it's part amp, part boat anchor. It weighs about 17,000 pounds.
What era of twin is it? Silver
81.
face?
81.
Red face. Red
even
dial.
stranger. Nope. Before that. So, you get blackface, then silverface, and then kind of silverface master volume. And then for a brief little era before the Rivera era, they went black again. And then you get the red knob stuff. And this is this weird transition-y blackface one with huge ass JBLs in it. It must have been for like a steel player or something. I mean, it is the heaviest.
Right.
Though I thought it would be terrible. It's actually a pretty nice sounding amp, and I'm selling it for cheap. So I got a guy.
I'd like to get my hands on one of those super champs that Rivera made.
Those are pretty neat. Yeah, I've never owned anything from that era, but I know that they're pretty cool. I just got a neat one. There's a legendary player down here named Lloyd Maines, and Lloyd, his daughter is Natalie Maines, who's the singer from the Dixie Chicks, and he played on and produced their records. But he's a consummate musician, just steel player, mandolin player, guitar player, and just a Southern gentleman. I love Lloyd. He sold me a weird one, a '62 Fender Concert, a brown Concert.
Is that a 115?
410s.
Oh.
So it's the amp between a Tweed Bassman and a Super Reverb. It's got the harmonic tremolo in the second channel, and the first channel barks like a Tweed. And man, it's a really good amp. But it's not that heavy. It doesn't. You think of a Super being like a lot of weight. This one's not much heavier than a Vibrolux, and damn, does it sound good. I got a super fair price on it, and I can't believe how good that amp is, man. It's
wow,
my ace in the hole right now.
I know you said you have to go, so I'll move us along. What sort of plans do you have for the Phil Hurley Band this year?
We are finishing up a record. I had started making a record at the beginning of last year, and I had that dreaded thing where a hard drive crashed, and I almost lost everything from it. But I slowly and methodically have pieced it all back together, and I've got 2 tunes finished and mixed now, and more to come. So, and I'm really stoked. It came out really good. So that's kind of the first thing I want to do. I want to get a record out, and we're working, we're picking away, playing. I'm not going far from Central Texas right now. As I mentioned, I got to pay my band, and unless there's something lucrative that I can make it worth their while to go out for a little while, I can't really ask that of them. But just playing. I almost went to work for Collings Guitars recently. I thought maybe that was going to happen, which would have been like a job, which I have never really done. But it looks like that's on hold at least. But so yeah, I just I work. I mean, like there was a time that I had aspirations of being a rock star, and I got to kind of flirt with that. Now I'm a working musician. I'm the definition of a working musician because I work. I mean, I saw you came down for my wedding in November. The month before that in October, I played 21 shows in October.
Wow.
So I mean, I just it's what I do. As and I still love it. So.
And I mean, it must have only been 2.5. Well, it was like it was the summer maybe before COVID hit. I saw you play at Green Hall.
Oh yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Green Hall.
You say it green, right?
Yeah.
It ain't spelled like that.
No, Groon. Yeah, Green's the oldest constantly functioning dance hall in the state of Texas, and everyone has played there, from B.B. King to Emmylou Harris. It's a really special spot, and I'm delighted that I'm in the regular rotation down there. Though I played there on January 2nd and had a great gig, and 2 days later had the mighty C caught the COVID. And so I spent most of it, and I was fully vaccinated and everything. And man, I've been sicker, but never sicker for longer. Man, it knocked me down for most of the month of January. I was sick as a dog. My lungs are still, like, playing on Wednesday, I could feel in my lungs that my lungs are still not right.
Singing was bothering you.
Yeah, just it's just I'm not.
I've talked to other singers who have had that issue.
Yeah, it sucked.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
luckily you're a killer guitar player.
Well, thank you,
man. Phil, again, when I think of guitar players who I know who just are very connected to their instrument, you were one of the first people that I ever met that could really play the shit out of the guitar, but never I mean, maybe, quietly to yourself, you're like, man, I hope I never have to hear that guy play guitar again. But you never, in the presence of me playing guitar, you're never like, hey, why don't you turn down? You're a pro, you're a sweet man. I love you. And just really one of the most talented people that I know.
Oh man, I appreciate that. And I don't know. I mean, I aspire, but one of the things that I've always thought about in music that I love the most about it is that it's a communication. I got to do a thing in Poland a while ago, or I went and I was definitely not the best musician on stage, but we all spoke the same language. And when I never felt like it needed to be competitive. I never understood why people wanted to turn music into a competition. That's why I can't get down with like these singing shows and stuff like that. I don't want music to be a competition. I want it to bring people together. I want it to be about communication and sharing, not winning. I mean, I think just by playing together, we all win, because music is beautiful and it's something that we share. Everybody gets to share in. It's a way of, expressing emotion for folks who don't have another place to express their emotions. That's why, I mean, I love the fact that a beautiful song still just makes me cry. And I cry with the joy of how much I love the way the music makes me feel. And I hope that never changes,
I hope it never does either.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up.
All right.
Don't hang up.
All right, I will not. But I'll call you again soon and we're going to talk espresso makers.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to stop this.